Fill in the blank. Home is... If you thought where the heart is, you're not alone, but what does that really mean? Well, it can change as we go through life. It's your family home where your childhood memories were made. It's a college dorm room where you felt like an adult for the first time in your life. It's the home in a new city halfway across the country where you decided you wanted to start fresh. If you think about it, many of our life stories can really be told through real estate in some form or another. We're going to have ups and downs, but there's always something to learn along the way. Hi, I'm Erin Davis, and welcome to Real Time, the podcast for realtors brought to you by the Canadian Real Estate Association. Today, we're joined by Shaun Majumder, an actor and comedian who's been through his fair share of moves and who's joining us to share his own life's journey through real estate. Well, Shaun, after all of these years of welcoming you into our homes, it seems redundant to welcome you here, but it's so good to have you talking with us today on Real Time. Thank you for making the time for us.
It is my pleasure. It is so good to be here. And I'm currently in Ottawa, and I believe you are where currently right now as we sit here?
Southern Vancouver Island. Isn't technology grand? Yeah.
I know. But I'm still on Los Angeles time because I flew in from LA yesterday to be here. So we are on the exact same time frame. So we're all
wonderful.
Unified. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I know we'll be on the same wavelength today as well as we talk about home and what it's meant to you and your whole realty and real estate experience through the years. But let's go back to what is your first memory of home? You're so good with words. Paint a picture for us.
Growing up in rural Newfoundland, like I was raised in a tiny town, 350 people, with no money. Like I never, the thing that I was focused on, I think as a little child, was my mom who took great care of us. It was me, my mom, my sister, and my wiener dog. And it was about shelter. It was about survival. Like we needed to live somewhere. And so when I think about, the stories that come from the places that you live, as adults, we focus on, things like square footage, and we think about the markets and mortgage rates. And like I had no exposure to this ever growing up. And even up until only a short while ago, my real estate education was so bad. Like I didn't even understand, like buying a house. How do you do that? Can you afford it? And what does it mean for your future? And like, is that an investment or is it just a place to live? So all of these things kind of have come to me as I've gotten older. But my very first place that I ever remember being inside of and calling it home, my mom, I think, she basically moved us into this tiny little trailer. It was like a tin box, and it was the safe space for me. It was, it held off crazy Newfoundland winter storms. It was a place of love and warmth and safety and security. At least that was from my perspective growing up. Now, if you look at it now, dude, it was a health hazard. There were electrical wires that were exposed. There were rats running around. Like when I think about now, it was like we had nothing. I mean, I remember the floors had that, that roll-on plastic canvas.
Yeah.
The technology has come a long way now. The smell of mold and mildew. Oh God, the memories are taking me back. But this was my first home. But it was so funny. I was actually sitting down and I was writing some things out. And I actually was like, well, what would that place, if we were doing an MLS listing? So remember now, this is a tiny little shack, sort of near the ocean in small town Newfoundland. Questionable running water at times, hot, forget about it. But this is how I would try to put this listing up. Oceanfront hideaway with vintage charm.
Oh,
750 square foot, 2 beds, 1 bath, ocean views. Step into this exclusive aluminum-clad retreat boasting an expansive 750 square foot of rustic charm, from the earthy aroma of the authentic moldy vinyl floors to the exposed electrical wiring that gives a peek into the home's inner workings.
Ooh.
Every detail is a testament to its timeless character, with cozy 6-foot ceilings, honestly, like it was a hobbit home. Creating an intimate atmosphere. You'll love the vintage appeal of the cupboards, some delightfully loose on their hinges to provide open shelving, like they were falling apart, basically.
Okay.
Enjoy the added peace of mind with walls lightly packed with asbestos. A natural fireproofing solution, ensuring that no flame will threaten your trailer. Except, of course, the occasional whiff of mesothelioma. For nature lovers, the kitchen comes complete with furry residents. We had rats. Yes, we did. Under the sink, connecting you with the wildlife outside. I mean, you know, it's pretty amazing how you can frame something. But again, when we talk about the importance of a home and how it informs you as a human being, you know, these were my earliest memories for me. And they were some of the most positive memories for me because it was about the people that were in that home and the creatures that were there, not the rats, but my wiener dog, I'll never forget. But I didn't have, when I started this journey on this planet, that was kind of like my introduction into, like, that was the bar that was set for me. So at a very early age, the concept going from that to anywhere where I am now, that's the frame of reference. So everything beyond that was a bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
I totally do.
When I think about housing and I think about where we lived, and it has its pros and cons, because now my understanding of what real estate is and how much is too much and what is the value, I've never been able to really wrap my head around it, to get a really good compass, unless you sit down and you really, really, educate on the academic level exactly what market means and what value means. What is value? Right. I think that's an important thing. Yeah.
Right. Value is what your heart sets and not just what the market sets. By the way, that listing you read me, I think it sounds charming. Do you have a price?
Yeah, I think, no, it is no longer there. I've been back to Burlington many times. Someone bought it, but I think they might have bought it for $500 or something like that.
Wow. And yet your memories are priceless. I'm picturing you just riding around the area with other kids on your bikes, making those childhood dreams. Okay, so the rodents weren't your pets, but they could have been. But in a Stephen King novel, they would have been. But it's just, that's the picture of home. And I have to fast forward to now with 2 children of your own. And I know we're jumping ahead. We'll go back to the middle, I promise you. If your children ever say, but Daddy, I need a bigger room, do you ever go back to that trailer and go, okay, wait a minute? Like, does it sort of form your entire perspective for what your children have now? Does it give you that foundation?
It's interesting because I'm not attached to my early days of where I lived as a way of saying, hey, listen, we don't need more space. You know what I mean? Because I lived in a place that had no space. I think what it did, it gave me a perspective of being grateful and being thankful and being conscious of, what really matters. Like, I think that's what it taught me early on. Coming from not much, and I say that, graded on a curve because I had everything. Like, that's how I looked at it. And I think what it did is instilled in me coming from that place. I think, my journey is different than someone, let's say, who was raised in a 7-bedroom apartment, a 7-bedroom house, in a really nice area. Once you start your life there, then, everything is about comparative, everything is comparisons and comps at that point, And so for my kids, now it's interesting because my kids were born, one was born in Los Angeles, one was born in Petoskey, Michigan. And we have a nice house in Los Angeles. She only knows the nice house in Los Angeles, the house that I now live in currently. Both of them, both girls, one is 2, one is 5. And so it's interesting because now I think, okay, well, wherever we go next and what the future will be for them, that's their baseline. However, we go back to Newfoundland a lot and we spend time in one of the houses that I did buy, which is another property that blows me away. Now, I would be curious to hear what the listeners think of this. So my journey in real estate, again, it goes from small town Newfoundland to probably Ontario, then to Los Angeles. And that's not all that, that's a combination of renting. That's a combination of owning some things, but owning came later. And I'll get to that. But
yeah,
but so by bringing my daughters back to the same place where I was raised, I think is a very grounding thing. And we have a small house there, very small, like it's a little box that's maybe 50 by 50. It was an old salt box house that when my dad, before he passed away, he wanted to go back to Newfoundland. He was raised he's from India. But his story is an amazing story too, which would be a different podcast. But I remember my dad was about ready to retire in Mississauga. He was living in Mississauga at the time. He was done working for Petro-Canada, and he was like, Sean, I think I want to go back to where to by the ocean. I want to retire there. I want to have a nice life there. So I was home one year and I asked around. I'm like, is there any houses available? Like, what's going on? And there was one house that was on the ocean, beautiful spot, beautiful little piece of land. And I asked, I go, can I get that? Is it available? He said, oh yeah, they might sell it to you. But by now I'd been on TV for a little while, so they were going to take me for a ride. Like they knew that they were like, oh, Sean Majumder, he's rich.
Yep, he can afford it.
So I ended up buying a house on the ocean for $25,000, and it was a ripoff. Like not a ripoff in the way that other people were like, you paid what? That is way too much.
Shoot.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I live in LA now. And I know that the value of this house on the ocean, $25,000. Never mind that. When I was a kid, before I bought this house, I actually bought another property. This is even crazier. I went home. The very first thing I ever bought was I went home and I was asking around for land, generally just for me. And a friend said, oh, yeah, I think the school that you went to when you were a little kid, I think the guy who owns that now is looking to get rid of it. Do you want to talk to him? And I said, yeah, sure. How much? And I talked to him. So the school that I went to in the middle of a town by the ocean, $2,700. Wow. 2,700. And this is before I was, on TV a lot. It was just enough. Like he didn't try to take me for a ride, but he was like, yeah, take it, 27. But there's still back taxes that are owed on it. This is another $750.
Okay.
So I got nailed on that. But still, a piece of land anywhere on planet Earth for $2,700 near the ocean, and the school that I went to. Like, yeah. I mean, it was crazy.
What did you do with that school? So, what'd you do with it, Sean?
Well, the school, I ended up, it was a decrepit building, but locally there were people who went and they took it down and they reused some of the wood, and they took the copper out, and they cleaned the site. But basically, it's a land that exists there now.
Okay.
But when I think about value and I think about the amount of money, and then I go to LA. And I'm at an apartment building that I'm renting there, for $1,250 a month, which actually was really good at the time. It was, locked in. The life experiences I was having there were amazing. But then, they were turning those condo buildings. They were going to sell them. And so we had to leave. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I met my current wife now. We were girlfriend. We were living there as a couple. Mm-hmm. And she was like, yes, you got to buy a house. I'm like, I can't afford a house. Like a house in LA? Are you kidding me? But then my business manager at the time, he applied for a loan and I was approved for a $500,000 loan.
Wow.
$500,000. And I was like, what? Half of $1 million? $1 million? Half of that I get to have and do something with for a house? Oh my gosh, I'm going to buy a mansion. Like, this is it. I didn't know that I could do that. Like, again, this all goes back to my tiny trailer in small town Newfoundland. And then also like $2,700 for a piece of property, $25,000, $500,000. So I get this loan and I'm like, we got to find a house. Then we start looking and there was nothing like that was livable for $500,000, like the again, it's all perspective. But we ended up buying my first house, proper house, in an area in Los Angeles, California, that was a little outside the main area. It was a small 2-bedroom. I believe the square footage was like 2,600 square feet. It wasn't a big house, but it was up on a hill facing west, beautiful sunset views. Everything that we could ask for, me and my newfound love of my life. And I literally carried her across the threshold. We bought a house. It's amazing. And the area was amazing, at least up on the hill. Because then we started watching a TV show called Gangland. And there was an episode of Gangland that was talking about this one particular group called the Avenues Gang. And there was a story about a beheading, literally a beheading that happened. And I was like, wait, that street looks familiar. It was just down the hill from where we had just bought this house. As it turns out, the area that we were in, we drove through that street all the time. It was like a hornet's nest of gangs that still were there. We're like, oh my gosh, this is insane, right? But it didn't feel unsafe. It wasn't unsafe. It wasn't unsafe. The house itself was up on the hill. But again, I'm not the same as my girlfriend at the time. Being female in Los Angeles is a different experience. I'm sorry, but it is. And meaning again, as a man, we don't think about the same things that perhaps she would think about. And she said this to me. She's like, you have no idea. Like we think about everything differently when it comes to security and safety. I'm very, very kind of, nothing bad will ever happen.
Yeah.
Which is not the best approach.
You've had a lot of experiences, and even before, of course, your marriage about 12 years ago. So let us get you back from Newfoundland, and you mentioned Ontario briefly and then on to Los Angeles. So let's carry on down this road of adventures and how you felt with each progressive move, Sean.
Yeah, each progression really informed me of different things at different times in my life. I think that's something that, again, I was never educated about the importance of home purchasing. I never thought of real estate as real estate. Like I never did. All I thought about was, where am I going to live? And where am I living now? And I didn't think about at the time, like when I moved from Newfoundland to Ontario, that was an interesting journey because my parents had split when I was a baby. And that's why I was living with my mom in small town Newfoundland with my sister and my wiener dog, and named Wiener, by the way.
Creative.
Awesome name, Mom. Awesome name. But when I lived there with my mom and my sister, and then I guess there were some high level discussions between mom and dad about mom moving back in with dad. But for the sake of the family, that was the thing. It's like, let's all live together as a family. And Mom, you can leave Newfoundland and come to Ontario. And I guess this was the discussion they were having. And so we picked up and we left my childhood home. And I remember we were in a U-Haul and we were driving down the highway, and I was leaving my town behind, and I was sad and it was very hard. But I knew I was going somewhere that I was a huge fan of, and that was Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto was everything to me because, my dad lived there and I looked up to him and he was a fan of him. I was a Toronto Blue Jay fan back in the day of, the Ernie Witt days, the Alfredo Griffin days. I was a huge baseball fan. I was a huge Toronto Maple Leaf fan. I bled blue and white. And I guess a little bit of red for the Jays, but it was just like everything was Toronto, and I'm going to Toronto. And we got on the ferry and we were heading up, and we got there, and I remember driving and seeing the CN Tower, and we kept going and we kept I'm like, there's Toronto. Why are we still driving? Toronto's back there. Where are we going? Dad, where are you taking us? Mississauga. What? What? And this is like 80s Mississauga, not cool, sexy, one of the greatest places to live in the world now. So they say.
Yeah.
Mississauga with their absolute towers. They didn't have the apps. By the way, the architect must have been drinking a ton of Absolute while designing those buildings. They're beautiful, but they're a little twisty. I don't know how
the Marilyn Monroe. Yeah.
Yeah. But we ended up in Mississauga. It wasn't Toronto. And it was very different than what I imagined. And it was also, he had said, we're moving into a semi-detached townhouse.
Okay.
Is that safe? Like, I'm like, is it? So wait, it's semi-detached? Is it fully attached? What are we talking about? This description of a building, like a semi-detached townhouse, did not feel secure and safe for me as a kid who I'm just trying to want a secure place to live. And we ended up at a place, 2315 Bromsgrove Road, in a semi-detached townhouse, a condo, which was very strange for me, but it was also it was like a little community because it was in one of those townhouse complexes that had their own road. It was like a campground, but it wasn't. It was very interesting, but it turned me to the gang life because I was a little brown fella that had a little mustache. I looked ambiguously ethnic. I fit right in, but they were recruiting me, the new kid. And we would do terrible things like throw, crab apples at cars driving by and water balloons. And so this new place that I live now with people of all these different ethnicities, which was amazing to me. It blew me away. Now I was in this multicultural, rich, diverse Jamaican, Trinidad, India, Asian culture. Everything was there mashed up, which was a far cry from where I was before. In small town white Newfoundland. Like, I thought I was white. I didn't know I was anything but white growing up. But then apparently, no, I'm ethnic now. So I was like, okay, I'm ethnic now. I love it. But living in Mississauga was like, oh my gosh, this is such a strange and amazing place. But I loved it. It took some getting used to. But the parents moving in with each other, not a good idea. Bad. They're divorced for a reason. And now we're living in a townhouse. I'm like a young tween-age fella with a mom and dad who are always fighting. Me and my sister always fought. And I brought my wiener dog, and he had a Springer Spaniel, and those dogs were always fighting. So it was a very stress-free, relaxed, casual vibe in Mississauga.
Yeah.
Where I was living. So, but so my teenage years of thinking about what Mississauga was like, semi-detached condo, it was community, but it was definitely a stressful time. So then my mom moved out, and we went into a high-rise building on Bodmin Road, which was not far, which informed me of a whole new kind of life where
right
now
elevators.
It was high-rise living.
Yeah,
elevators.
Yeah. Woo!
That was huge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And but it was also interesting because my mom, she was now she was working at an old folks home. She was a nurse. She would literally, it was me and my mom, my sister stayed with my dad in the condominium down the street. And then it was me, my mom. She would work from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. So then I had like an apartment to myself from 11 till 7. And that led to me, of like you would when you're 15, living in Mississauga, you pick up the keys to the Hyundai Stellar, and you're going to go for a little drive because I still had gang ties. I use gang very loosely here, guys. I wasn't really a part of a gang.
The Crabapple gang, yeah.
The Crabapple gang. And we would take my Hyundai Stellar and we'd go for a ride around that street area at night. And one night, I'll never forget it. This is all because of where I live now. Keep this in mind. This is all real estate related. But because I lived in this apartment, I remember we parked the Hyundai Stellar next to the Miracle Food Mart. We all went in because we were going to go get some gum. Came back out, car was gone. I was like, "What's going on?" And a guy goes, "Is that your car, bud?" And I looked, and the car was out of park and rolling towards traffic.
Oh,
slowly, because it wasn't a steep embankment. And I was like, and I was running towards this car. And luckily, the grass and the curb stopped it just before it went into traffic. I mean, I was 15. Like what that would have done to my life if that car went out into that thing. But again, this was all because of where I was living at the time and a very low rent, place. But again, speaking to the low rent side of things, I didn't understand what that meant, like how hard that must have been for my mom too, who, was just fighting to work long enough just to pay rent. This idea of rent and stresses around rent was something that I was unaware of until later in life. But so anyway, these are just little stories about where I lived and, how it informed my perspective,
It's sad that the year that you signed on with This Hour Has 22 Minutes is the year that she passed away. Did she get to get even a glimpse of the success that you were about to achieve, Sean?
She saw some early successes. She saw me on YTV.
Yep.
That was huge. Huge, working on television. And she saw me doing lots of stand-up and stuff like that. But yeah, she was an amazing mom. I mean, she passed away in 2003, and it was interesting because we went back into that apartment, the same apartment I'm talking about, after she passed away. And her sister was there, and she said something really powerful. I remember we were going through all of Mom's stuff, and my aunt, she was really upset, obviously. And one thing she said was, she was like, this may not be a lot where we are right here in this place, but she was doing everything she could to make it the best place it could possibly be. And again, that goes back to the original trailer that we lived in, where there was no moment in my life where I felt like we didn't have. There was no moment in my life where I feel like we were lacking in any way, shape, or form. And that's powerful when you think about it. When we think about real estate and we think about purchasing things and how it informs who we are as people. Like we attach our identity to a lot of things. And I think that no matter the square footage, no matter the value of your house, no matter how big or fancy or, coming from where I came from and the way Mom kind of instilled that value system in me, again, it goes back to the good and the bad of that. When I think about my education and my knowledge of real estate, it has the ups and downs. But I think at the core, it definitely makes me super thankful for everything that I have moving, beyond that. And then to instill those values in my daughters as well. I think that's going to be very important. But it's hard. It's hard, when your first thing that you have is something really, really nice.
Yes.
How
it's true.
How then do you navigate managing expectations, I think,
so
from
true.
that point on.
Let me ask you, Sean, when you lay in bed, either in the trailer, and a bed undoubtedly that you shared with your sister, and of course Wiener the wiener dog, and
exactly, and a few bed bugs.
Well, we'll leave those out for the next
Please
podcast.
Do.
Okay, and then the next iteration in the semi-detached townhouse that you thought would be so close to the then Skydome. When you lay in bed, what did you think of when you thought, when I make it, here's where I'm going to live? What was that dream or what you pictured, and did it come to fruition?
I didn't have a dream. I didn't. Again, this goes back. This is what I'm saying. I never dreamt of the nice house. Again, I was like, I need to make enough money to pay rent.
Right.
I need to be able to have a decent place to live. But I didn't think in my mind that it's about value. Again, it's like,
right.
I didn't have the dream. And it's so interesting because the dreams only came when the wife came, when Shelby came into my life. Now, this is interesting because she is incredibly astute and knowledgeable of the things that I was not. Value, real estate. For some reason, she was obsessed with real estate from a very early on. She loved markets. She loved seeing what houses were selling for what, in what neighborhoods. Thank God she came into my life because she was the one who was first to say, hey, look, I think you should purchase something. This is in Los Angeles. But I was like, I can't afford it. But of course I can afford it. I just didn't understand how the system worked. I didn't know you didn't have to go, like when I saw the price of a house, I was like, I can't buy that. But you don't buy that. You get a loan and you understand leveraging value and understanding your interest rates and monthly payments. And I mean, I did not know any of this stuff. So when we bought that first house, I think that was the first time where I started to see, it's like, oh my God, Shelby, you're right. Like buying a house, not only is it an amazing investment, but it's also something that then moving forward gives you leverage to get you into whatever that next thing is. And that first house in Los Angeles, again, it was $665. We put maybe 60 to 100 grand into the house. And so we bought that house, I think it was in 2005. And so we were like, boom, we saw the value starting to go tick up. I wasn't tracking value. Again, I didn't even understand what that meant. I didn't look for that. And then 2007 rolled around, then 2008 rolled around.
Yikes.
And Shelby was freaking out. And I was like, what do you mean? She would track it. She's looking. She's like, our house is now half the value that it was only a few years ago. And that was a scary thing, right? But at the same time, I was like, but are we selling? We're not selling. So it's going to come back. I'm sure it'll come back. And she was like, no, it could never, it's never going to come back. And luckily it did come back. But we were also on the backside of that. I think it was in 2000 and, we held on to that house for a long time. And then we were in a position where, again, Shelby was dialed into the real estate market and she found a house that was over in one of the nicest areas in Los Angeles, one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Los Angeles. But she's like, it's a screaming deal. Like, this is a screaming deal for this house. And it was north of $1 million. And again, I'm sorry, but as a tiny town Newfoundland guy, like, I'm like, hey, $1 million? Are you kidding me? We can't afford that. And she was like, of course you can. What is wrong with you? And we have the leverage of this house versus that house. And then we were like, okay, well, we're going to sell this house and we're going to buy this other house. She found a house that she really liked. And I was like, oh my God, it's an amazing house. But I was nervous about it. And, but the way that it worked was the only way we would get approved for the house over here was if it was contingent on the sale. And our house over here didn't appraise at the value. It was under what we were listing it for. Mm-hmm. And the sellers, the buyers were like, nope, we're not going to take it at that price that we agreed to already. But now that it appraised here, you got to sell it. You got to sell it for here. So it would have put us even on this house. But as it turns out, we were getting a screaming deal on this house over here. So it ended up working out. And that's now the house that I'm in right now, which is a house that has appreciated exponentially over the last bunch of years. And so again, not something I could have imagined or foresaw because I just was never wired or taught or, and I think that's important to kind of take away now when I look at it now with I'm stoked on real estate now. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I want to know more. I want to do more. I want to buy more. I want to educate myself. Now is the time. It's a little late in the game for me, but it's never too late to really dive in. And over the years too, not only that, I've bought buildings. I've, bought buildings with partners that have been up and down. One of them, I invested in a small hotel that was on that was in Santa Barbara that my business manager said, throw me $30K and we'll say, that broke even. But I found out later, this is a funny story, that the same company that had that hotel wanted to buy a small hotel in Newfoundland, the Battery Hotel in St. John's, Newfoundland. And they wanted to call it Hotel California. And I was like,
no, I think you can check out anytime you want.
There,
yeah,
probably wouldn't call it that. Don't call it that, please.
Right.
I'll invest in it, but I will,
Right.
I bought my first, another building with a partner of mine, Ron Lovett, who is doing incredible work. I just got to give him a huge shout out. He has a company called Vita Living. He is reframing, the affordable housing market. He's blowing it up. He's doing incredible work. Look up Vita Living, Ron Lovett. But I bought one of my first buildings, and I think one of his first buildings we bought together just outside of Halifax. Understanding the rules around the tenant laws and how incredibly hard and difficult that can be to manage. Thank God I wasn't managing that. He was. So over the years, I've done different things in the real estate market. But again, a home is a home is a home. And so that is what really matters to me now when I think about buying currently for my family, my little nuclear family. That's going to be really interesting moving forward.
I know you don't want to give advice. That's not what you're here for today. You've done such a wonderful job of painting pictures of the places in your life that you have lived and your adventures. But where do you see the basic skills and talents of the good comedian, the good improv artist, the yes and the listener, the person moving the conversation forward as being in kindred spirit with good realtors?
Yeah, I think your relationship with your realtor is one of the most important ones. Seeing a realtor, meeting a realtor, hearing their pitch, hearing how they, manage expectations, I think is a really important factor when you are kind of partnering with a realtor. I've had several different realtors. I've had different agents as an actor, and I think bottom line, authenticity is one thing that I feel like is so important. A person who is authentic, a person who is a great listener. I think a person who is a great, no BS kind of a person too. Because I think that you can have an agent who can tell you so many great things that you want to hear. But one thing that I've learned, whether it's, in the industry that I'm in as an actor, as a creative person, we can be susceptible to hearing the things that are going to get us excited about partnering, because they're going to promise the world, we're going to do this, we're going to get you this, and this is going to happen. But I find that, in both the acting agent world and the real estate agent world, the grounded, practical, but also forward-thinking, strategic realtors, they're the ones that I've always responded well to. We're actually talking to a realtor right now. There were 2 realtors that I spoke with over the last little while. This is really interesting. We met with a guy who came to our house. He's a star of one of these reality shows, and he's a great guy. He's a super great guy, but he deals with $10 to $50 million homes on the Sunset Strip. And we met with him, come look at our house, talk to us about, he was enthusiastic out of the gates when we sent him a note. He was like, we're going to come, we're going to have a conversation. And his conversation, his immediate reaction to the house, when we were talking about the number that we were looking at, hoping to get, or we had a general idea as to what we were hoping to get. His first reaction was, nah, you're never going to get that. You're never going to get that. And then I was like, okay, well, I don't mind being schooled on what the market is doing right now, but he had answers before the questions. And that was something that kind of turned us off. No matter what, maybe he's absolutely right, but there was an initial interaction with us that really was a bit of a turnoff. Then I met with another guy. He sat down. He was the warmest. He said, listen, we're not even going to think about a price right now. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about your needs, what you're looking to do. We're going to be, we're going to be honest about what we think is realistic. And we're going to come up with a strategy, but we're not going to come up with any kind of pricing until we get to that place, because also the market is like, the wind. Who knows what's going to happen with the upcoming election? Who knows what's going to happen with interest rates? Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? Let's see what the buyers are. But this was the conversation we were having. And immediately I was like, I love this guy. I love his vibe. He listens. He's practical. He knows my local area incredibly well. And he's got a good team. And it was just that vibe immediately that made me go, this is somebody that I can work with, and that I really want to work with to make this, if we're going to put our house up, this is the kind of personality that I would be interested in working with. So I think, any advice that I can say to realtors, like, no matter so I guess it, from a buyer or seller perspective, I know that you guys do workshops. I know that you guys have trained through the wazoo. But I will say, on a very simple person-to-person experience, being a great listener is one of the most important things. And I'm going through it right now. I just had that experience that it made me feel really comfortable with this realtor who listened to where we were at, what we wanted to get from our house. But he was also very grounded and practical at the same time.
You have made better listeners of all of us today, Sean. You really, truly have. It's been
I hope you can make sense
pleasure.
of some of the crazy.
Are you kidding?
I hope
what
you
a
can
life.
make sense. Yeah, I hope you can make sense of some of what I was talking about. But
absolutely.
But yeah, for me, I'm driven by story, and real estate has become such a huge part of my story. Not in the buying and selling perspective, but the places we live. And I think we can lose sight of the importance of where we live and experience and the value of that when we talk about real estate. It's not all about numbers and value in the market. It's about value in life. So when I think about all of this, it's more about the ROI in the life experience versus dollars down.
Sean, just before we go, we have heard where you're from, and now you would like our listeners and viewers to go to from. Can you make sense of that sentence for me, please?
I can. People are freaking out about this show. It's a show we started making during COVID. It's shot in Halifax. It has a Canadian kind of connection, and it's a horror series that Stephen King loves. He thinks it's one of the scariest shows on TV.
Awesome.
And it's a really cool show about a small town where people get trapped and they can't get out. And at night, monsters come out and eat you. Just like my experience growing up in small town Newfoundland.
There you go.
But it's a great show. I would encourage you all to go watch it from the beginning. It's the same people that did Lost. So it's a puzzle show. You got to figure it out. For those of you who know, you already know. It's
all right.
It's taking the world by storm right now. So
thank
you for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Congratulations, Sean, on that, on everything. And thanks again for joining us here today. We're so grateful.
Thank you so much.
As always, if you liked this episode, and we're sure you did, please tell us by giving us a rating or review on your preferred podcast platform. We always appreciate it. Real Time is brought to you by the Canadian Real Estate Association, CREA. Production is courtesy of Alphabet Creative with tech support from Rob Whitehead. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. I'm Erin Davis, and we'll see you next time on Real Time.